How many member nations are there in the UN? Everybody reads that every day, don't you? Come on. Here, okay, I'll give you a tough question. How many countries in the G8? All right, 6. We got a winner. Okay. How many companies in the G20? How many countries? 20. And we have 192 countries in the United Nations. Think about this. The 20 nations that are meeting in a week or so control about 85% of world GDP. So 25 nations, 85% of world GDP, right? That's not bad. That means 172 nations have only 20% of world GDP. So it's an interesting situation, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit this morning. Okay, here are these 5 items, and if I'm going too fast or too slow, just let me know. Okay, we know that humans are humans, right? And normally with increase in knowledge comes a change in behavior. We also know that we can make a decision. It could be 100% logical, 100% intuitive, 100% emotional. Normally it's a combination. In my business, which is equity investing, if we waited to have 100% fact, we'd lose our draws, okay? So what you really have to do sometimes is go with 70 or 80%. But here's a couple of those things that hopefully we'll have a dialogue on, because anecdotes are important and not many people are writing on this. The center of global economic activity is shifting toward Asia and really North Africa. I don't think anybody denies that. But let me ask you this question. If we took China and we took India and we say Pakistan's in the middle, we'll say they're all connected, how many people live in those countries? 40% of the world's population. And each one of them is a nuclear power. So that's why we spend a lot of time in my group on defense. Defense is very important. It's an economic motivator, but it's very, very important. The industrial world is hitting the demographic wall. I know one of the other speakers mentioned this. This is absolutely true. If you look at the G8 countries now the G8 countries are about 54% of world GDP, right? The G20 countries are about 80%. So the G8, we put Russia in there because George Bush thought he was getting good relationship with Putin, right? But believe me, there's no democracy in Russia, okay? There's no democracy in Russia. G7 had democracy. Anybody know why our friend George Bush put Putin into the G8? Remember you said I looked in that man's eyes? And I really saw somebody that had a soul that I could do business with and so on. And everybody says, this guy's a jerk for saying that. Well, I got to tell you why Bush said that. He didn't see his eyes and a soul. He saw natural gas, okay? Natural gas. And what you're going to see is joint ventures bringing natural gas into the United States, going through Canada, going through the mid-continent area, and bring it down to the Gulf of Mexico. If we can convince Putin that if he gets his old job back, he doesn't act like a czar, okay? I could go through his psychological profile. One of the most interesting things I get involved in is when we have these psychiatrists come in from the Central Intelligence Agency or one of the other agencies, and they give you the profile of these world leaders. Some of them are flying very low. I mean, we really got a problem. And Putin's got an ego the size of this room. He's got a concern about his little height. He's got a concern about an arm that doesn't work too well. So he's got a whole host of problems. All right. So then it says here, the U.S. economy is becoming more export-driven and less consumer-driven. And I think that's the dilemma that we really have to speak about. We can no longer be 70% of our GDP to be consumers. I mean, the consumers are hurting badly. You can't satisfy a consumer until you remove the dissatisfaction. It's going to take a long time to take fright and dissatisfaction away from the consumer. Fear is a much more powerful motivator than greed. Then we come down here and we say women dominating the ranks of higher education. This is mind-boggling. Now, one of the problems we have with men is not only are they going backwards, they don't have children. So the question we have, normally, our most educated children, our best behaved children, our most disciplined children, our best nourished children come from college graduate females. So I just told you the United States is the only G8 nation that doesn't have a net decline in population. We have about a 2.1 birth rate per female of childbearing age, which is break even, roughly break even. But when it comes to college females, it's about 1.7. So we're running out of college-educated women, and that's going to be a big problem. And that's one reason why this nation, our nation, has to become more export-driven, because we're going to run low, not just on consumers, we're going to run low on consumers with money in their pockets. Higher living standards for younger Americans, including college graduates, becoming harder to achieve. You're beginning to see that already. I think skills are going to be more important than bachelor's degrees. So it's an interesting phenomenon, and that takes about an hour. We have a chart on it. Okay, let's talk about today and then see if we can catapult to the future, simply because psychologists tell us most people have a tendency not only to put too much weight on the present, they also predict the present. And that really is a challenge. Inflection points happen. We're probably seeing an inflection point right now. Look at the amount of wealth that has been taken out of our society. And if you're 37 or younger, I mean, you have never witnessed anything like this before. If you just take a look at 1998, and you see that $35 trillion in household wealth, and then go down to 2007, $59 trillion. Look at how we were on easy street for so long, and then we took another $5 trillion out. And in the first quarter of this year, we also took another $6 trillion out. But we bounced back a little bit in the equity market anyway. So household wealth is not what it was. People are now frightened. If you sit around the household, what do you talk about? Unemployment. We really have a problem here, simply because people have seen the labor market crack. They've seen the credit market crack. You can't get credit. They've seen the financial markets crack. They've seen residential real estate crack. And now they're going to see commercial real estate crack. It's going to take a while to turn that around. You can't satisfy somebody until you remove the dissatisfaction, and we're still in that dissatisfaction phase. And once you remove the dissatisfaction, you just broke even. You haven't satisfied them yet. So that's going to be a challenge. The biggest asset people have is their home, followed by their common stock investment. Now, there's some double counting here, but look at the drop in the stock market. It goes from $11 trillion in 98, 2007 at the high, $21 trillion. Unbelievable. That's when people had this great wealth effect, and they kept saying to themselves, I don't have to worry about it. My house is only going to go up. My 401k is going to go up, and I don't need to save. Okay, and look at where it is, $11 trillion in 2008. Look at that jump in 1 year, $10 trillion in the equity market. You can see how consumers are frightened. Then they pick up the newspaper every day, and they're flushed again. After 6 quarterly drops in the S&P 500, we finally had the second quarter of this year up. But when you have people going 18 months getting smacked every day with negative headlines, looking for the government trying to find a solution, looking for the government getting larger, looking for the government bailing out the big banks, and people saying there's nothing left for me, you can really see where people get frightened. And now what's happening? We're beginning to see a little bit of a change. All it took was a 15% gain in the S&P, and a little bit of better activity right now, cash for clunkers and things like that. Is the bottom over in fear? I don't know, but it looks like it's getting to that point. And what we have to talk about, if this was an economics class, I do some economics and finance teaching, we could talk about Joseph Schumpeter and Ludwig von Mises and von Hayek and so on. But basically, John Maynard Keynes he kept very close with Adam Smith, and they talked about the paradox of thrift. And the paradox of thrift is simply this. When you want people to spend, they save. When they're fearful, they're saving. And that's what's happening right now. The paradox of deleveraging, which is very important, people had debt up to here. You know, it wasn't only Lehman that hit 50-to-1 leverage ratios. You know, I happen to be on the board of a bank, and you look at people coming in looking for credit, and their leverage ratios maybe are anywhere from 8 to 12-to-1. So the paradox of deleveraging is, if you want to stimulate your economy, you'd like people to borrow. Now they want to pay off their debt. So now they want to save. They want to pay off their debt. And you say, how does a 70% consumer-driven economy really work? It doesn't. You need exports. All right, then a blooming reverse wealth effect. Oh, my God. Anybody look at that McAfee screen on their PC when you open it up in the morning? Well, he is close to bankruptcy. He had $2 million, and he's now down to $4 million. Because when he made all his money in the stock market, they told him, take half of your money and put it in real estate. And that's exactly what happened. So you're going to see some very, very big bankruptcies coming down the pike.